so often we have our cell phones or whatever, and in life we're just taught this natural thing to always constantly be doing something. Otherwise, we feel like we're not accomplishing something. Right. And getting out there on the mountain and just sitting as still as possible and watching the world move.
Hey guys, welcome back to Solid. I'm glad to be back with you this week. I missed last week, but Jeff and Kelsey did a great job with Justin Prince, as you all know. This week, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about hunting and the outdoors and how that applies to our lives and success. We recently got back from a hunting trip together, and so we discussed that as well as just everything that we've learned through the years with having great adventures in the outdoors. So I'm glad to be here with my co-host, Jeff Fieldstad. Hope you enjoy it. I'm excited about today just because you know me. I love hunting in the outdoors and I love adventure, and I know you do. And you're getting into it more and more.
I am, yeah. As I learn about it, I think it makes me more excited. The more I do it, the more I learn about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I already know you like adventure because you were going to sail around the world. You did some of that for a while, which to me, that freaks me out to be on the ocean and be in the middle of nowhere. And
yeah, I think it's just movies, man.
Must be.
It is. Well, it's just like, right, like going to Alaska and someone dropping you off and say, I'll be back next week or whatever. Yeah. That could be scary if you're not prepared, you don't know the weather, but once you do, it's like, all right, I'll be fine.
Right.
Yeah, I think the ocean's the same. Yeah, I mean, no matter where you go, nature is, you have to respect nature no matter where you go. I think that's what creates the adventure, is knowing that any time nature could give you a run for your money. Mm-hmm. So you have that respect and like, all right, I need to pay attention to what's happening. And so, yeah, I feel like sailing and I feel like hunting, very similar. Any kind of adventure, I feel like nature is what makes it special.
No, it's unpredictable. Yeah. Anything could happen.
Yep.
So we just went hunting. We went hunting last year. Mm-hmm. You and Rome came with us for a couple of days, I think 3 days last year.
Yep.
And then this year you came out with Bridger and I for a couple of days. Yep. And we were just on the general deer hunt, southern Utah. And I love that you're getting out with us. I love that, last year was kind of your guys' that was probably your first experience really actually hunting.
It was my first introduction to hunting, yeah.
Okay.
Which is cool. I had a great time.
Good.
Thanks for inviting me, man.
Yeah. No. And I think Rome had a good time.
He had, oh my gosh, man, he's obsessed.
Yeah. And it's fun to get out there, and the first couple times you go out, sometimes you don't have all the right gear, and you learn very quickly how important gear is, right?
Yeah, that was, I think, probably one of the biggest lessons last year is it snowed. An unexpected.
Well, the first 2 days were nice, right?
Yes.
And then that third day we went out. Well, I can't remember how it went.
The first 2 days I think were probably like 55, 60 even.
In the day it was nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then that third day it snowed a foot.
Yeah.
A foot and a half.
Where we were at.
Yeah. And Rome wasn't ready at all. So his feet were freezing. I mean, his toes were freezing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I should have thought that through a little bit better, because we wanted to go to this area on top and then work our way. We were going to hike all the way down, remember, and try to just see what deer were moving from the top to the bottom. We're in an area where the deer are migratory, so they go from the higher elevations to the lower elevations. And so it's a tricky area to hunt sometimes, because you're not typically hunting resident deer that are living in that area their whole life.
Yeah, it's not like you're going to go scout and you know what's there. Usually
not.
Yeah.
So usually they're moving. There are some that do that, but and I would argue maybe some of the biggest bucks do that. They do live there, but they stay in the thick timber until after dark.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I looking back on that, I wish I would have thought through a little bit more. He didn't have boots,
right?
Because we got to the top there, and I'm like, oh crap, he's gonna be freezing.
Yeah, I was impressed with him actually. His mental toughness. Seeing, last year he was 7, and seeing his mental toughness at 7 years old, he was willing to go to the top.
And he was actually at 7 years old was very. I was impressed. Yeah. I know you were concerned. I'm so sorry. Dude, he was very good. I mean, Bridger was 8, so my boy Bridger was 8, which at that age, a year is a big difference.
Huge.
And Bridger had been hunting, and so he kind of knew the ropes. Rome had never been hunting.
Right.
But overall, he was still pretty quiet. Yeah. I mean, they're kids. They want to play around. They don't want to sit around and glass a hill forever.
Get bored.
They get bored. and they get uncomfortable and they start complaining sometimes a little bit especially when they haven't been out before because they don't know it's temporary.
Yeah, I'm actually so grateful for that, honestly. Because last year when we did that, I think so many lessons. That's why I'm glad we're doing this today, because so many lessons Rome has learned from that, right? From going to the top of the mountain, there was a foot of snow, his feet started to get cold. He still wanted to go. He didn't understand the fact that, like, if your toes freeze, they're gone, right?
Yeah.
You don't get another pair.
Yes.
He was tough enough to get back down. And then I was actually a little bit nervous, like, dang, man, I put him through something tough. And he couldn't wait.
You were afraid he was going to maybe hate it.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I let it be a little bit too tough for him. So I thought that he would not enjoy it. And then this year when you said something, he just couldn't even sleep. Like, oh my gosh, it's hunting season. Like, let's go, So it was cool. But then I think it taught him patience, how to be quiet, whisper, that you can sit and wait for a long time and then still get what you want, right? And so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that he learned last year, and then this year he applied it really well too. I think he did a lot better this year.
Yep.
And then I see those attributes apply at home too, which is cool. Like awesome. In soccer practice, one of the things I never saw happening with my son is that we would go hunting on the hill and have to sit in glass and be quiet. I didn't see that when he would play soccer and the coach was talking, he would sit and be quiet and pay attention and listen because the coach is talking where all the other kids might be playing or whatever. It's just like a natural thing, right?
Yep.
You're coaching.
Yep. I'm doing it right now. We got our butts kicked again last night. But we're getting better.
Yeah, just trying to get those kids to pay attention is not an easy thing. And watching him pay attention, those things I know he learned them from hunting the last 2 years. So it's awesome. Cool. It's cool for him to see.
That is awesome. I mean, and it's no joke, right? I mean, you get in the elements and you get too cold, and it's not a good thing. Now, right. We were smart. I knew we were only a hike back to the truck, and we could turn the truck on and turn a heater on. So in that type of a situation, when you're with little kids like that, and especially if you don't have the right gear, you've got to keep yourself in a position where you can safely get back, because it's possible to get too cold and hypothermia could kick in, and that could happen. So you do have to have the proper gear.
Well, I think you need to be prepared, and you need to know, and with anything in life, right? When you're going into a journey, an expedition, an adventure, you should be prepared, right? It's not very wise to go into something unprepared.
Right.
And those are some of the things that I think I've learned from you the last couple of years hunting. Obviously I learned so much from you in business, and then watching you apply that out here, though, is cool too, because you see, like, all right, do I have the right gear? Like, the first thing I think is, like, can you shoot a rifle?
Right.
Like, once you find that animal you're looking for, if you're not a good shot, what's the point?
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, once you know how to do that, then you have the right gear, then you go through, these adventurous times, whether it's freezing cold in the morning, freezing cold at night, hot during the day. Yeah, you have to know how to adjust. I think that only happens through experience. Maybe I'm wrong, but
no, I would agree with you. And there may be people that listen to this and go, "Okay, I'm not a hunter. What can I get out of this?" And I think you can get a lot out of this as we kind of talk about all these different aspects of just hunting and survival and conservation. And one of them is, let's just talk for a second about the preparation of what it takes to even get into hunting.
Right.
There's a lot that goes into that, and a lot of preparation as far as you got to know where you're going to hunt, of course.
Yep.
You've got to, like you said, you have to have the right weapon, whether that's a rifle or a bow and an arrow or a muzzleloader. And so there's a cost to all of that, right?
Yeah.
And so and you're learning that right now.
Yeah.
Because this year, from last year to this year, we stopped by and we get a lot of our stuff from King's Camo. So we stop by and through Rolling Bones Outdoors is where we get all of our gear, right? So and that's, people don't maybe not know, I'm one of the owners of that company as well, and we specialize in equipping people for hunting all over the world. And so in this particular situation, we were going to equip you and Rome with the proper gear for Western hunting, right? Mm-hmm. And you learn very quickly, okay, there's boots. Mm-hmm. So if you really add this up, let's say you're an adult and you go, man, I would like to get into hunting and I would like to have good gear.
Yeah.
Because my opinion is you might as well do it right if you're going to do it.
Yeah.
You can go get the cheap stuff and it might get you by for a hunt or two, but there is a difference between a $100 pair of boots and a $400 pair of boots. People go, $400 for boots? Yeah.
No question about it. There's a massive difference.
Yep.
Yeah, so, last year I wore $100. I mean, that's the exact number. Last year I wore a $100 pair of boots. This year I wore a $400 pair of boots. No question. Last year my toes were freezing. This year never even crossed my mind.
Yep. So
last year I think I was wearing 2 or 3 pairs of socks. This year I was wearing 1 pair of socks, still warm. Never even thought about it.
Yep. And there's different kind of boots, right? There's boots with insulation. I usually wear uninsulated unless I'm on a really cold hunt, just because my feet stay pretty warm usually. So there's boots, and then there's your gear. I mean, by the time you get your good pants, when I talk about gear, we're talking about good pants, good layering system, all that.
Again, that goes to preparation. And I it's just so funny to me, man, how similar, I mean, success is success, right? But what you have to do to prepare for hunting is exactly the same thing as you're going to do with anything, right?
Uh-huh.
But having that layering, knowing where you're going to go, what is the weather going to be, what is the best prediction we can have on how cold it's going to get or how hot it's going to be. And then you have to have, right, base layer system. So as it gets hot, you can take stuff off because, right, it's like most people don't understand when you get out there, the worst thing that can happen to you is you get wet.
Yeah.
And we sweat, so.
Big time. Yeah, wet. In fact, that can end your hunt very quickly. If you that's a good point. You get wet and then you can't get warm, right. You're in trouble. And so that's where if you're going to be hunting and people go, I don't need rain gear. I'm hunting in the desert. Well, as soon as you don't bring your rain gear, it's going to rain, right?
Yes.
Every time I bring my rain gear, it doesn't rain.
Yep.
But if I leave it at the side by side or my truck, it tends to rain. So.
Well, and then in addition, how about sweating, right? So like if you're hiking and you get too warm because you don't have the right layers, you can't take stuff off, then you sweat and then you get wet.
And you got to have gear because you're going to sweat.
Yep.
So you got to have gear that you sweat and it still keeps you warm and it dries quickly.
Yes.
So there's been times where I've hunted even just in Salt Lake. We used to go hunt the Wasatch Front in December with our bows. Well, I guess November. I guess end of first December, and it would be snow. It'd be you get up in the morning and you're in the single digits.
Yep.
But you start hiking up that mountain and you're sweating and you get to the top and you're drenched in sweat, even though you layer and you take off. I would take off all my layers except for maybe like a shirt like this, where I just had this and maybe a vest. And if I was wearing just something from Walmart or something cotton that never dried, I'd get to the top and I'd freeze to death.
Yes.
But when you have like a merino wool layer that can keep you warm even if it's wet, not only does it keep you warm when it's wet, but it also dries quickly.
Right.
And there's even gear now where you could wear, there's a video out there from a company called Stone Glacier, and they layer up their puffies and everything, and they go jump into a lake full of ice. Mm-hmm. Like 10 guys do it. And then it's to test all the gear. Yeah. And then they have them all get out, and they're freezing to death, right? Because they just got out of this water. And what they do is they all go back to their tents, into their sleeping bag with all their puffies on. Mm-hmm. They don't take them off. They keep them on. And then they heat up some warm water and put it in the sleeping bag with them. Mm-hmm. And within an hour, they're dry.
Wow.
And their body heat dissipates all that moisture, right?
Yeah.
So it's really cool how the technology of all that stuff works today, and
why it matters.
Yeah.
Right. That goes back to preparation, like understanding that once you're out there and you're wet or you're too cold or something, it's too late. There's no fixing it once you're out there.
Yep.
Right.
Now you can go hunting and you can not get all the gear and you can go on a day hunt or something and maybe be fine sometimes, but you just if you're really going to do some hunting, you just never know what like I say, the elements, the weather is going to do. Right. And I've been out where I thought it was going to be really mild temperatures and just didn't bring enough layers and froze my butt off. So you're much better off to just have it all just in case. And people that are like, well, I want to start getting into hunting because I want to be able to provide, if I needed to provide protein for my family. I want the experience. I want to raise my kids into hunting. You need to I'm happy to talk to anybody. I love this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And help them get geared up. But there's going to be a cost, right?
Yeah.
So gear. You're thousands of dollars. Well, not thousands, but you're probably $1,000 to really get geared up with boots.
Yeah, I would say at least once you get a pack and
you add a pack. That's another.
Yeah. You put you get a headlamp and. Yeah, I think you're at least $1,000 probably.
At least, because even
some nice stuff.
A good pack like that one you were using is a Mystery Ranch, and we sell a lot of those. That's a really good pack. I love that pack. That's one I'd get if I was you. By the way, it's a $500 pack.
Yeah.
And but it's all you need. You get that, and then you have your optics, right?
Yeah.
So then you got to be able to find your game. So. you've got spotting scopes, and there's cheap spotting scopes and there's more expensive spotting scopes. And there is a reason why the expensive ones are more expensive. So I've got a Swarovski spotting scope. It's an ATX model. And then I was with we went up to Wyoming 2 weeks ago to vet a new camp. And the guides we were in there with, it was an antelope hunt. And what was really cool about this is we found this camp where there's, the quality and the size of the antelope that are there, I should call them pronghorn, that's the official name for them, big antelope. There's an area in Wyoming called Red Desert, and everybody's typically trying to draw the Red Desert. And this year, this area we were in was much better than the Red Desert. We went up there and we saw, 75-inch goats all day long, which is that's a trophy size antelope.
Wow.
Normally you're hunting, probably 60 to 70 inch, if you kill something between 60 and 70 is a good antelope.
Yeah.
So these are potentially 80-inch plus is what we were looking for, and we all ended up killing 3. There was 3 of us that were hunting, myself, my partner Brian and Brad, and we all killed. Theirs were just over 78. Mine was right at 79 inches.
Awesome.
So they were really good. But anyway, we went up there and I had my spotting scope set up looking at some. And then the guide who I was with had a Swarovski as well, but it was like a couple years older.
Yeah. A
different model. Side by side. And you could tell a big difference between the one I was using and his. He goes, "What is that spotting scope?" I got the same one. I go, "No, this is the upgraded one." They're both HD, but one was just significantly better. So their technology is always getting better, right?
Yep.
And that kind of stuff makes a difference, especially when you're trying to judge like an antelope, where they're hard to judge anyway.
Right.
And you need as clear a picture as you can. Sometimes you got heat waves.
Yep.
And you got to be able to see all that stuff. So, yeah, spotting scope, $2,000-$3,000.
Yeah.
You got your good tripod is $500. You've got your binoculars. If you want to have all the ballistic data, if you're a rifle hunter, you're $2,500 to $3,000 there, right?
Yeah.
So this stuff adds up to how do you afford to go hunting? Now, you don't have to have all this very high-end stuff.
Right.
Okay, you can go out and you could, for $1,000, you could probably do it, but just know if you're going to do it, I think it's worth finding ways to do it right.
I think that takes you back to a question I think we need to get into is like why hunt, right? So once you know why, if you're actually going to do it, why would you not go invest into the best equipment that's going to help you become the most successful?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Because just like in anything, right? Anything you choose to do, whether it's a sport or business or whatever it may be, if you invest in something good and you make a wise investment up front, it's going to pay off long term.
Yes.
A lot of times you see people take the cheap route in whether it's in business or hunting in this case or sports or whatever, and then 6 months down the road they either choose like, all right, I've got to upgrade, which means I got to go spend all this money again to upgrade in the equipment that I need, or because they didn't have a great experience having the right equipment, maybe they chose not to continue to move forward. Which,
True. And you could go get a really good spotting scope for $1,000 to $1,500 for sure. You could definitely do that. You don't have to get the very best of the best, and they're still really good. You know. And then if you did want to upgrade, you can typically sell that stuff pretty easy. And
it holds value pretty well.
It does. Yeah. It does. So you got that. Then you got your rifle system, and a rifle system you could spend anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000. It's crazy what you can do there too, right? And then if you want to do archery, you got to buy your bow and your arrows. So a full setup for bow and arrows, you're going to be at least, price that stuff out for probably $1,500, $2,000.
Yeah, I would say at least. I've been looking at bows.
Okay, you've been looking at them.
I would say $1,500 to $2,000 at least to get a nice setup. Yeah,
if you get like a Matthews or a Hoyt or definitely. And then there's muzzleloader you can use as well. So anyway, there's all these different things to consider when you're looking at it, but. I just, maybe we could talk a little bit about just stories and hunting and what we've learned and some of these things that, I was fortunate to have a dad who, I think I was blessed to have a dad who always loved to hunt. Yeah. So he took me out when I was very little. My first memory of going out with him was, I had to be, I think I was only 6 or 7 years old. And I remember getting up one morning and hiking up to this big rock up a canyon. Just there was a spot that he had. I can't even remember. It was northern Utah. I can't remember exactly where it was, but I remember sitting on top of that rock and just watching for deer. And he had over the years prior to that killed a couple deer up there. And that morning we never killed a deer, but I remember it so vividly because we made a fire. we cooked Vienna sausages. My first time I had Vienna sausages, and they tasted so good on the mountain, right? Like I'd never eat them at home, but on the mountain, it's like, dang, that's good.
Everything tastes better.
Sardines, we had sardines, and I was like, dude, those were so good. And so I got home and I wanted to have some, right? And then they just didn't taste the same at home. But you get out hunting and you get hungry, and all that stuff just starts to taste better, right?
Yeah, everything does. Yeah, you're more tired, you're more worn out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like I was saying this year, like I slept better than I've probably ever slept in my life. And I wasn't worn out or anything, but we were up early, right? So I was up at 4:30 in the morning so we could be out on the mountain by 5:30 or 6. And then so we're watching the sunrise. And then all day, you know, we're hiking, you know, going to the next spot or glassing all day. And then we're watching the sun go down, and then we're hiking, you know, and I think when you're tired, when you're exerting that much energy, when you're out in the sun, you're out in the elements, just naturally food tastes better, you sleep better. I mean, for me, like last year, the experience I got, and then this year, the experience, it just confirms, like, I just love being out there, but I think there's so many benefits that I see in life from doing it. I'm like, man, I'm so glad that I get to be the dad to raise my son doing that, because obviously my dad wasn't around to do that with me. But it's really cool because I had this different perspective too growing up, like, hey, man, it's in the grocery store. You can go to the grocery store and buy it.
Sure.
And that was the perspective I had, right? I didn't have this perspective of like, oh man, I want to go hunt because it's cool or whatever. It kind of happened as I saw you doing it in all these, you know, great conversations we had, that I had an interest in it, right? I've always loved shooting. I've always loved hiking. I've always loved adventure. I've loved being out in nature. But then, so the first time I went, I realized like, man, there's so many cool things that happen out there on the mountain, right? Whether it's, waking up early and building camaraderie, building a bond. And then another thing, man, that I think that surprised me the most is how many animals are out there when you have the right optics.
And you're a good spotter, by the way. You spot deer all the
dude.
time. Yeah, no, you spot some good stuff.
Yeah, I can't even believe it. I am blown away still. I still can't believe how many animals are out there once you have the right optics, that you can see all that. And for those of you listening, maybe never been hunting, I never realized that, whether I'm out in nature, which I've spent a lot of time out there, right? It's not like I haven't spent a lot of time out there, but until you get a pair of binos or a spotting scope and you start looking, there are animals everywhere. You just can't see them with your bare eye. Right? And how cool is it that once you start doing that and realizing like, oh my gosh, another thing that I think was really powerful for me is so often we have our cell phones or whatever, and in life, we're just taught this natural thing to always constantly be doing something. Otherwise, we feel like we're not accomplishing something. Right. And getting out there on the mountain and just sitting as still as possible and watching the world move, and how much movement there is and how much there is to see if you'll sit still long enough to start watching the world actually come alive. I think too often we move so much that we don't realize what's around us. And so for me, that was a really, really powerful learning experience, is like, all right, if I sit still and then I just start watching things move, the world comes alive right before your eyes. It's really cool. It
does. And you'll experiment. You've only been out a couple days at a time. When you're able to go on a hunt where it's a week or even 2 weeks, like I've been fortunate to be able to go to Alaska for a couple of times where it was like a 2 week long deal, right?
Yeah.
And you're out there, and when you have that amount of time, you're not rushed. And I think, the best hunts that I've been on have been the hunts where I have not felt rushed. Like I've only got 2 or 3 days, you've got a week.
Yep.
And you can go out there and you can enjoy, like you're saying, you can enjoy being out there and let it happen, and so like even just this general deer hunt, I pretty much hunted it. I couldn't hunt it every day because we had that antelope hunt in Wyoming that kind of overlapped it. So my first morning out was Tuesday morning, and I went out there before you guys were able to come the next day. And that very first morning, I saw a great buck. He comes out right in the flipping open after the sun came up too, by the way, which is, those big bucks are gone by then, but he came out at that point. I'm like, oh man, he was like, 1,200 yards away. So I couldn't get a shot at him. And anyway, so I was able to experience that very first morning, which that doesn't usually happen, but it got me really excited. And then we spent the next couple of days trying to get him, right?
Yep.
He just never showed himself again, so just to where we could. But then, we hunted the rest of the week, and you guys came out with us, and we went to a couple different areas just to kind of see where the deer were. We saw a lot of deer, just nothing that we wanted to take, nothing that was, big mature deer like we were looking for. And then Saturday night, which is the second to last day of the hunt, I told Bridger, I said, okay, Bridger, we're going to take the side-by-side, and we're going to just drive to the end of this road, and we're just going to start hiking up the mountain. And we're going to look for a place where we can just see good enough, and we're going to get away from the other hunters, and we're just going to see what happens. We're just going to go and enjoy the night, and that's really what we do. We're just going to go on a good hike and see what happens. Pretty eventful night. So because we decided to do that, we hiked about, I measured it on my Onyx maps, about 2.5 miles. And this was in the lava rock, up a mountain, down,
not easy. Yeah, it's not easy country for sure.
The country sucks to hike in. It really does. And he's a trooper.
Everything's sharp.
Everything's
sharp. Everywhere.
Yeah, and he stays right with me. Finally, we get to this little opening. We got a little opening in the cedar trees, and we can see a couple of burn areas where there was a fire a couple years prior. That were like, they were probably 100 yards each as far as the size of the burn.
Uh-huh.
And there was one that was further out that was like 800 yards. So there was two. One was like 600 yards, one was about 500 yards. So I glass, and I see like five or six deer. And I go, oh, Bridger's deer. Let's sit right here and see what these are. So I take the spotting scope out, and it's like $5. And none of them are real big. One's okay. I'm like, hey, Bridger, you think I should shoot this deer? And he goes, I don't know. Is he bigger than the one last year? I go, no, he's probably not bigger than the one last year. Let's watch him. Let's see what happens. Maybe there's a bigger one in there.
Yeah.
So we spent the rest of the night watching those deer. And this happens all the time where you're watching them and there's a big one in there. You just don't see him until later, right? Mm-hmm. And as the sun's starting to set, sure enough, we see a big buck show himself. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, Bridger, that's a good one. Let's see. But the problem was I had to shoot over the top of trees, and I had to almost stand up to shoot, which you can't shoot it was about 500 yards away. You can't make that shot, right?
Ethically,
exactly. So I set him up on the spotting scope with my phone camera on there, and I got up just high enough to where I could use my shooting sticks to get a shot, and that deer was just over the top of the cedars, what I could see. If he would have taken one more step, he would have been out of the picture. So I said, all right, Bridger, I'm gonna take a shot. And he was kind of a quartering too, which you prefer him to be broadside.
Yep.
Just because you want to get all those vitals when you make the shot. But if he took one more step, he was gone. And the rifle I was using it's a 6.5 PRC. I knew that it would do the trick the way he was. So I got steadied up and let one fly, and it hit a tree smack on right in front, dead center. I've got it on film, right? You saw it. And Bridger's like, oh, you got him. I go, no, I hit that tree, bud. And anyway, it takes off. He's like, no, right? So that was that night, right? Yeah. But what was cool about that is because we took the extra effort to just go. I didn't know what it was going to try. I'd never been to this spot before.
Right.
And I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know we could have very easily just taken a 2.5, 3 mile hike in and all the way back without being able to even see.
Right.
But the chances, I mean, this is where I think God's hands in it too. A lot of times, because I always pray before I go out that we'll have success. To me, that was a successful night.
Absolutely.
I didn't kill the animal that I was after, but it was super successful because he was with me. He saw it. He experienced the whole thing. And the chances of us seeing deer in those burns at that time, in that little spot we were in, like, what are the chances of that? So anyway, then we're walking out that night, and Bridger doesn't know this. I don't think he's going to listen to this, so I'll say
that. All right. Don't give him access.
Nobody tell him this. If you guys know Bridger, my boy. So we're on our way out. It's pitch black. And we have our headlamps on, and we got a long hike out, right? So we're just hiking, and I look up, and I see this. I see these two eyeballs come up and stop and look at us, and I look closer, and I see the head, and it's the head of a mountain lion.
Mm-hmm. How far away?
Probably 30 yards. And again, it was dark. Now I've got a mountain lion tag.
Yeah.
But there was no way I could see it was pitch black, right?
And all you have is your rifle.
I have my rifle with
me.
Have a pistol? Didn't have a pistol.
Okay.
No. So, anyway, so
I always carry my pistol, by the way,
just in case, right?
Every time.
So I'm sitting there watching it, and then it turns and walks away. And Bridger goes, "What was that?" And I go, I think it was a deer. I didn't want him to be freaking out the rest of the way.
Yeah, especially how many miles do you still have back?
We probably still had 1.5 miles to go, maybe a mile to go. Yeah. We were still a ways out. Yeah, which in the pitch black and on a steep mountainside is a long way, you know, and you can't see anything, and you know, you still got to find the side by side. I had it marked on my GPS, but yeah, it was one of those things where it gave me the chills, you know, and so. We got back anyway, so we did that. Came back the next morning, saw the deer again in that same spot, and it just couldn't. He was further away, further out. So we tried to make a play on him. It just didn't. Ended up not getting him or anything, but it was awesome. I mean, it was a great experience.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of times, you know, for me, before going out there, in my mind, success was only if you got this big trophy animal, you know. Not realizing, like, I mean, let's face it, we could have shot a deer almost at any time we were out there.
Every day we could have shot a little deer, right? Yeah.
Right. But it just wasn't what we were looking for. Yeah. Right. And so, yeah, you can take those chances. And I think going back to success is like, all right, sometimes you take the easy chances that are maybe a little bit easier wins. And if you do that, it takes away the opportunity to go have this big win that you're really looking for. And in pursuit of that big win that you're looking for, there's going to be a lot of exciting things, a lot of lessons learned. And it makes it even if you don't achieve that big, you know, that buck that you found, you don't get him, but still throughout that process, and then it gives you experience and knowledge and all that kind of stuff for the next hunt, right? Yes. And then your odds of getting that big trophy that you were looking for, the odds of getting it are going to go way up.
How about this? Do you feel that there was a bond created between you and Rome that hadn't been there before?
No doubt about it.
Yeah,
yeah. I think getting just not only between Rome and I, but I think for everybody, right? I think anytime you go out and do those things with somebody, it's like there's this unsaid bond, I guess, if you will. Yeah, it's just like this. It's like you don't have to say anything. We just know we're out here doing something together. And I think, with Rome, it's really special for him because we get to spend a lot of time together. We're learning together. We're hiking together. We're getting tired together. We're excited when we, sometimes we find, oh my gosh, there it is. Look, and it's so cool to see that and see them get excited. And then, another cool thing is you learn so much about like preferences of your kids that maybe you don't learn in an environment like city because, you can't do this, you're nervous about that or whatever, where when you're up in the mountains, it's just, all right, there's a few little instruction, be quiet so you don't scare off the animals and stuff like that. But outside of that, it's almost like they get to kind of be men.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
They get to grow up.
Well, I think about too, you did that shooting school with us last spring, and we do those every spring. And actually we do them all through the summertime actually. And the bond just between that group of guys was really special, I thought, right? And we had a group in with us, and one of the guys that was with us ended up having a heart attack and dying the day after the school, right? And I remember I took my family to Disneyland that next week, and I remember hearing that, and I teared up. Yeah. Now, I knew this guy for 2 days, but he came to our shooting school, and you just spend that time learning a new skill. And just there's something about that. I know on our way out on Sunday night, we're driving along and Bridger goes, my eyes are watery. I go, why is it too windy or is it, dust something? He goes, no, I'm just sad the hunt's over. And I know that feeling because I remember going with my dad when I was a little kid and then the hunt was over and then having to go back to school and just being so sad that my experience with my dad for that week was over.
Right.
And, there's just been so many times where, there was one time when I was 11 years old and we were hunting an area called the Paunsaugunt. My dad drew a tag. It's probably the best unit in Utah. And we were hunting and we came back to camp after the morning hunt and I had my little pellet gun, right? I was out shooting rabbits and stuff. And I go, Dad, my dad's going to go take a nap and you're a kid. You don't need a nap, right? So I'm going to go look for some rabbits. So I go start hunting rabbits, and while I'm out doing that, I lose track of where I'm at. And I ended up getting lost at 11 years old in the middle of,
nowhere.
I didn't know where I was. Yeah. So I did know where a highway was, fortunately. And I kept trying to find my way back to camp, and I just kept walking, couldn't find my way back to camp. So what did I end up doing is I ended up walking back to the highway. There was a semi coming down the road, and I flagged down this semi. He was going the opposite way I needed to go, but for whatever reason, I flagged that one down. I to this day don't know exactly why.
How old were you?
11.
Okay.
So I was scared, but anyway, I mean, I didn't think I was going to die at that point, man, because I'm on the highway. I'm not going to die, but because once I got to the highway, I did know my way back, but there was a dirt road miles down that I had to get back to camp to get there for sure. I knew how to do that. So I told the cemetery, hey, I'm lost. Can you take me back to a dirt road down here? And he goes, yeah, sure, hop in. So I hop in with him. We have to drive all the way back down, basically to Kanab to turn around. And drives me all the way back, get on the dirt road, start walking down the dirt road, and then one of our friends drives down the dirt road. Hey, your dad's looking for you. I go, yeah, I know I'm lost. So picked me up, and man, that was get back to there. And my dad's like, hey, I was so worried about you. Did you pray? I go, yeah, I prayed. He goes, I prayed too, And just those I get emotional about that kind of stuff because
awesome.
Those little moments, right, are just times you bond, and you can't. I don't know that you get that. I mean, I guess you can get that other ways too, but
it's like creates this, brotherhood, if you will. It's almost like this. It's like those times you can look at somebody, you don't have to say anything, and you know what they mean, right? It's like, all right, we speak in this code. Nothing needs to be said, right? It's like you only build those relationships with people that you go through things with, right?
Yes.
And yeah, it's awesome, dude. I remember I got lost one time too in the mountains. I was with my uncle. My uncle is from Salt Lake City. We were in the mountains in Idaho. And we were on four-wheelers, and we had left a small little town called Idaho City, which is like there's not even a stoplight. I don't even think there's a stop sign. It's a teeny little town. So we head up into the mountains. My aunt and uncle were at an ice cream shop, and so we were just like, hey, well, they're eating ice cream. Let's just go mess around up in the hills.
Yep.
And I thought my uncle knew where he was going. He was a lot older than me. I was like 12, and, I don't know how old he was at the time, 35 or 40. I just assume he's the adult. He's paying attention. We're just flying through the mountains, and then as the sun starts setting, I start realizing, like, I don't know where I'm at, and he thought I knew where I was going.
Sure.
And we didn't, but it made me realize at that point, like, if you're out in a situation like that and you're doing something adventurous, you better pay attention to where you're going, right? You better pay attention to where you started, what direction you headed, and you might not take the same route back home, right? It might not be the same path, it might not be the same route, but at least you know what direction you need to head there. I think that's an important thing that you learn. And these things like sense of direction, like I've always said, I have a horrible sense of direction because I'm never paying attention, right?
Yeah.
But if I need to, I have a great sense of direction. And I think I've learned that through that time where I got lost. I got really scared, actually. I was nervous because I knew my uncle didn't know anything. Like, we would have died out there,
Was it, what time of year was it?
It was fall, so it was warm during the day, but it gets cold at night. And there's bears everywhere.
Sure.
Right? I mean, we had seen, that day, we probably saw 4 or 5 or 6 bears, you know, so I knew there was bears everywhere. It's just not a great place to be at night, especially when you don't know where you're going. You only have so much fuel, too, on a four-wheeler.
Right.
It's not like you can just keep going until you find your way back.
Absolutely.
You have to know what direction. And kind of a similar thing. We actually got to a highway, and thank goodness they were doing this thing called a fun run, which is like, kind of like a race or whatever.
Yeah.
And they had given us directions how to get back and filled up our four-wheelers with fuel. So we got back okay, which was nice. But I was scared, man. I never forgot that day about how important it was to pay attention when you're up there in the mountains.
And that can be tricky to do when you're with somebody who knows where they're going. You just have a tendency naturally to just trust that.
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of times guys will work with us with Rolling Bones that want to do it themselves, which is great. And then people that want to go guided. And even when I go, and I like both ways. I like do it yourself, but I also like to go guided. And the reason why I like to go guided is for a bunch of reasons. One is that guide knows the area very well and is able to get you to the place that's the most game rich. There's typically the most animals in that area. You're still hunting. You still have to put in the work. You still have to be patient. You still have to persevere. But you get to learn from that guide. And what I try to do is I try to make sure that I pay attention to how to get wherever we're going, just in case.
Right.
And if I've got a GPS, I can mark it on my GPS and I can follow my way in, follow my way out too, just in case we do ever get separated.
Right.
Because you're right. That's very easy to not pay attention to that. So, and I think that's the same thing in life, right? Where it's easy to drift through life when you have I'll just call it, for lack of anything better right now, an employee mindset. who's maybe just showing up to do their duties every day versus paying attention to what the business owner of that company is doing. There's a big difference, right?
Huge difference.
And that owner is the guide. That owner is and if you're wise, you should be paying attention to that so that you can one day, if you want to do that, if you want to own something yourself, you should be paying attention to becoming the guide.
Yes.
Because the guides have all the success, right? The guides in life have all the success. They know where to go.
It's true, man. It's like I was telling you before we started recording that after hunting these last 2 years, I have so many analogies for success with hunting. And that's one of them is like, I enjoy learning from you so much out there. Like, paying attention to animal tracks or, scat or, seeing, even things I notice now where there might be a hole in the trees where you can see it's an obvious animal route, where they're taking and stuff like that. And then just learning the country, right? You get out there and you start learning where things are. And I'm constantly mentioning that while we're out there. It's like, oh my gosh, so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's because I realize like how few people actually get out here and enjoy these incredible locations that we have, especially in Utah, man. There's so much beautiful landscape.
There is.
And just people don't get out there and learn. But going with somebody who knows the way is powerful because I get to go with you who knows this area like the back of your hand, really, right? But then I'm constantly trying to pay attention, like, hey, where are we? What road did we take in? How did we get here? And I just like to learn, right? So I like to learn not only the country and being out there and how I'm always asking questions about the animals that we're hunting. Hey, what do they eat? What time do they wake up? How do they migrate? Do they make sounds, right? All this kind of stuff that you get to learn. And I think the same thing is with business, right? When you have somebody who's been there and you've had somebody who's had success, it's like the more questions you can ask and the more you can learn and the more you can pay attention, the more that you can get out of an individual who's had success and actually start duplicating some of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's powerful.
It is. And I mean, I could go on and on about the different experiences I've had with hunting with guides. And not only that, but maybe we should talk a little bit about the importance of perseverance and how it always pays off.
Yeah.
If you persevere long enough and do the right things long enough, it always pays off, especially, and I shouldn't say, I mean, hunting, there are things on the outside that you can't control. If weather moves in and things like that happen and the hunt happens to end when that bad weather moves in and there's been times where I've been hunting and a fog moves in, right? Or there's bad fires. If it's earlier in the year, bad fires, you just can't see more than, you can't use your spotting scopes or binoculars. That stuff does happen. But there's been many experiences where I've had where I think a lot of guys would give up and say, this is no good. And I think, one of those examples was in Wyoming a couple of years ago. One, it was a horseback hunt, which, if you've never ridden horses and you start riding horses for an extended period of time, there's muscles you don't realize you have that hurt really bad. So
bruises you get.
Oh my gosh. I got more beat up from riding. We were actually riding mules. I got more beat up from riding the mule than I did hiking. Yeah. And we hiked a long way too.
Yeah.
But so anyway, so that was really cool. But we got there, and very first morning we saw a giant buck with another good buck. But they were it was just before light, and they were up on the hill, and we couldn't tell for sure what they were. And I jumped off real quick to try to get a shot off, and they walked up over the hill. And then after that, it was just really warm weather. And we didn't see anything for the rest of that day, and the whole rest of the next day, we didn't see anything. And it was only a 4-day hunt. So third day, we had a big storm come in. So we rode the mules up through the storm, and it was so cold. We lit a fire to stay warm up on top. We were very, very top of the mountains up there in Wyoming, which, Wyoming can get pretty nasty. Wyoming is
windy.
Yeah. When you're on the top of those mountains in Wyoming, we were 8,000 feet. And, I've been to Alaska too, and Wyoming's every bit as harsh as Alaska. It can be just nasty up there. So we had to get a fire going, and we stayed warm, and then the storm finally broke. So I ended up hiking up over the top to I could see about a mile in this area, and it just started glassing. And sure enough, this buck I've got on the wall here behind you showed himself at he was probably 1,700 yards out.
Which one?
This one right here.
Okay.
So he's a good deer. Right? That's a big deer.
Yeah.
And saw him way out there, and my uncle was with me, so I guess I grabbed my uncle and said, "Hey, there's a couple good deer over here." And so anyway, they ended up feeding towards us, and then we had to kind of get closer to them. So we hiked around where we get a shot. We got within about 600 yards, and mine was laying down next to his. They ended up laying down, bedding down in some thick brush, but we could see him. So I said, okay, I'm going to shoot mine. I had a suppressor on my rifle. I'll shoot mine. Yours isn't going to go anywhere. They're far enough away, and it was windy, so they were not going to hear it.
Yeah.
So I shoot, mine drops. I go, okay, he's done. Your turn, right? And his is still laying there. All his did was kind of like flinch a little bit after I shot. You're like, what was that? So he shoots and hits his, and his just drops. So I've got my deer and his deer right there side by side. We're celebrating. We're so excited. They're both really good deer, right? Good mature deer. And like, this is awesome. Let's go down, check them out. So we start riding down the canyon to get to them. Well, by the time we get there, his is gone.
Oh no!
Now we have this thing on camera.
Yeah.
He's shooting a 7 mag. He shoots it, and that thing dropped. Like, he's dead. You can see him in the camera. He's dead. And anyway, we get up to him, and he got up and left.
Wow. So
we tried tracking him the rest of that night till it got dark. Couldn't find it. So we got mine. Got it all processed and got it off the mountain. Got down that night, and started showing the guys in camp, hey, check this out. What do you guys think about this? And they're going, he's dead. Mm-hmm. We're like, he ain't dead. He got up and walked away.
Yeah.
So anyway, next morning we had to go up and we did end up finding him, and he was still alive.
Wow.
And he was not doing well, but he was alive, and so we ended up getting him. He ended up shooting him again and killing it. But he ended up hitting him right in the neck, which still should have killed him.
Yeah, just no.
But it must have just stunned him enough to just knock him out.
Yeah.
And those deer are so tough. So those are some of the highs and lows you have. And then on that same trip, my dad, the day prior to that, he got bucked off his mule on the steep side of the mountain and broke 2 ribs. Now, he didn't know he broke 2 ribs at the time, but he was hurting. So he took that day off. And the next morning, got up and got on. There was a mule there. We called it Eeyore because it was so low to the ground. He could almost like stand up and walk. Not quite that low, but he was a small.
His toes were dragging on the ground.
He looked like Eeyore. So my dad goes, "Okay, I can ride Eeyore." So he gets on and he's hurting, right? And he ended up killing a deer that morning, a good deer. So all 3 of us got really good deer. That broken ribs. I mean, you just learn that perseverance and toughness. And that was a physically demanding. We had to get up at like 3:30 in the morning to get up on the hill, and then and it was a September hunt, which means it didn't get dark until 8:30.
Right. So
you're hunting all day. You're getting home at 10 o'clock at night, and you get a couple hours of sleep. You take a nap in the day usually, and you get up on the mountain. But that's I mean, we had a couple clients go up to Wyoming this year. Actually, they booked this. They were from the Midwest. They booked a hunt with us, a mule deer hunt, and we told them exactly what it was. It was horseback. This is not a little pink tutu type hunt. Yeah. This is a adventure, okay? Yeah. Well, they go on exactly what it was, and it was an adventure. Now, the weather was warm, so they didn't see a lot of game. There were bears, grizzly bears, quite a few grizzly bears in their camps. They had to drink water out of a stream. We told them to bring filters. They didn't bring filters. Anyway, they weren't ready for that experience. So there were 3 of them, and on their way back off the mountain, one of them actually ended up seeing a good buck and killed a good buck on the way out. So they get back, and of course he's excited. He's happy he got a good buck. Now the other guys were frustrated because they were actually called to complain. Man, these guys, this was a terrible hunt. We had to drink water out of a stream, didn't have a filter. There were bears in our camp. We had to ride these horses that, and we're not good at riding horses. And we're like, you guys, that's what this hunt was, right? Now, if you don't want to do a hunt like that, that's fine. Let's put you on a hunt where you can ride a side-by-side, or you can stay in a lodge.
Yeah.
There's those options, right? Yeah. And so it's I don't know. There's so much to what we do with Rolling Bones to help people experience all this stuff, to have the best experiences, to learn these life lessons. But to me, I mean, that's an adventure those guys will always remember,
Yeah, you never forget those times. It's funny you say that, because I am always, my wife thinks I'm crazy because I'm always looking for adventure. I'm always looking for that thing that I'll never forget. Mm-hmm. And one time, actually, Cam Cornish and I, we were in the Bahamas. We're on this island called Eleuthera. And there's nobody on the island, right? We're in the off season. There's literally maybe like, I don't know, it's a 100-mile long island, and maybe there's a couple hundred people on the island at the time. So we're in a place we hadn't seen anybody all week long, if that tells you. We had not seen one person. We got there, went shopping for our food, got our food from the grocery store, went to the place we were staying at, and we had some kayaks, and there was some weather coming in, and so we had seen a shark earlier that day, and I told Cam, hey, we can go out there and try to find him, see if he's out there, and go check him out. Well, I jumped in the water out of the kayak that day. We went out a ways, and there was like these little keys off the ocean, and so I jump off, and no joke, I almost jumped on to this shark, right? Like
really?
I jump in, and he's like a foot away from me.
Wow.
You know? So I got nervous, and I jumped back out of the kayak and went, dude, I almost jumped on him, and he's right there. So I decided, all right. Then the weather's kind of getting crazy, so I jump back in, and he just swims off, And Cam didn't believe me. He's really never spent a lot of time around sharks. I'm like, dude, he's not just going to come eat you. I just don't want to jump on him.
Sure.
And so he swam off. So we go trying to find him. Well, in the meantime, trying to find him, we weren't really paying attention, and the weather had come in, and the weather's starting to get bad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, dang, dude. So we take the kayak, and the waves are getting too big for us to sit on the kayak. It just keeps tipping us over.
Yep.
So we have spear guns, a kayak, horrible weather, big waves. We're probably, I don't know, maybe a mile out at these little keys. So let's tell Cam, let's just get in the water. We'll just tie off our kayak onto this rock, and we'll just get in the water, and we'll just sit here and float and,
Sure.
spearfish until the weather passes. And it does. It passes. We get back. And it was a hurricane, dude. We didn't realize, we were on this island. We didn't realize a hurricane had come flying through. But we'll never forget it, man. It was crazy, right?
Wow.
We had such a good time. Like, it was risky, right? We shouldn't have done it. It was a stupid decision. But we'll never forget it, right?
Yeah.